Hello, I'm Lindley Good and welcome to Market Forces webinar, Let's Get Personal, Exploring New Frontiers in Customer Engagement, hosted in association with Microsoft. Now, brand loyalty means everything. Sadly, it's safe to say that the retail banking industry perhaps hasn't built the best reputation in recent years. But with competition rising rapidly and ever higher benchmarks set by companies, including the GAFA, banks need to react rapidly to stay with the pack. Having said that, despite that growing competition, it's a really exciting time to be at the cutting edge of banking, with new technologies offering you the opportunity to reinvent your relationship with your customer. The shackles of legacy systems are obviously coming off slowly, and even regulators want the industry to innovate. So if you can get personalization and customer engagement right, you'll be at the heart of a business that should look completely different for the better in a few years' time. And that's why we're here today. We, over the next hour, will be exploring exactly how banks are and can transform their approach to customers and what a truly personalized experience should look like over the next few years. Let's meet the panelists who'll be helping us to navigate the great customer experience conundrum. First of all is Clive Grenier. Hello, Clive.
Good afternoon, Lindley.
Good to see you. Clive is the Design Director at Barclays Bank, a role which he took on in 2013. He started his career in product design, but Clive now leads several notable projects in Barclays, including the design of its new investment platform, Smart Investor. Great to see you today. Next, we have Sabrina Del Prete. Hello.
Hello, good afternoon to everybody.
Good to see you. Sabrina is the Digital Transformation Director and member of the Executive Committee at Future Williams & Glyn, part of the RBS Group. She's accumulated more than 25 years' experience in financial markets, business transformation and banking. She now also spends her time mentoring startup fintech organizations. Great to have you with us today.
Thank you.
Last but not least, we have David Brown. Hello, David.
Hi.
Good to see you. David is the Financial Services Director for EMEA at Microsoft. Now, he brings over 15 years of CRM industry experience to the table, assuming leading roles in partner, marketing and sales strategy at Microsoft. Well, thanks for joining us, David, and thanks to Microsoft for supporting our webinar today.
No, it's great to be here. Thanks.
Couldn't do it without you. Okay, over the next hour, we have lots to talk about, and we want to put you at the heart of the discussion too. Now, you're bound to have your own questions and comments wherever you are, so we want to give you the opportunity to put them to our panelists right here if you're watching us live. You can send them in throughout the webinar using the Twitter hashtag, which is Customer17, that's Customer17, or the question section on our webpage here if you're a little bit shyer. We'll get to as many as we can towards the end of the discussion. But let's get started with the current state of play. Genuine personal engagement is the holy grail of customer experience across every industry, not just this industry. Let's kick off by discussing where banks are on this journey right now. Sabrina, kick us off. How good are banks? Where are they falling short?
I think banks are very good when they organize themselves around customer journeys. I think they're bad when they think that they can do that at a very superficial level without going really into the inner working of the bank and the way they're organized. So I would say probably that in a very short sentence.
Good, bad. I mean, it's a heck of a job to do, and everybody here watching us today, from whichever area you come from, knows how difficult it is to assess customer experience, to understand your customer at all, despite regulation and so on. But Clive, I mean, again, from Barclays Bank point of view, there are a lot of customers, but steps are being taken. They can always go further.
Sure. So I think some of the things we're doing really well are, for example, keeping up with that expectation of mobile, digital interfaces. We're actually doing pretty well there, and people are embracing them, and in fact becoming quite demanding of how well we're doing that. We have to take people on a journey because the kinds of interactions they're having with banks, they expect them all to work everywhere, so we have to try and deliver that. So there's still a long way to go. Some of the things that are quite tough and difficult to get right are where all those systems in the background need to come together to speak with one voice and act in one way, and that's very challenging for banks, and not all of them are doing it well.
Our expectations as customers are changing rapidly. We know that, particularly on the interface, on the way that we access our materials, our information, our data, our money. But have our demands changed in terms of what we want? We want the information. We want to be able to transfer. We hope there's money in there tomorrow. Has that changed that much?
Well, I think in some ways people just want it to work and have an expectation it will work everywhere, exactly as they want it to work, and they don't want to work around our systems at all. But also, of course, people are measuring their experience with the bank by the experience they have with Amazon or any other really fabulous digital brands, for example, and not just digital, the more human-centric brands as well that are offering the kind of services when your needs are a bit more complex and a bit more emotional. That's where technology, and that's one of the reasons we're talking about it today, how do you provide that very personalised, more complicated scenario where you really help people?
Personalised, humanised, a natural experience, a seamless experience. And David, you know, what are the big obstacles? There are so many obstacles technically, but what are the big obstacles to provide a personalised customer experience? Now, we could spend 10 hours on that.
Yeah.
What are the headlines?
I think the point that was just made, you know, I do see customer expectation being at an all-time high, but the difficulty for banks is that now people will do something about that. They'll leave, you know, they'll go and join another bank, and that was never the same in the past, you know. But the increasing willingness of customers to switch because they're not getting a great experience is there today. And there's this example that I saw where customers also feel more empowered to change, not just their bank, but to also the experience they're getting, and customers being more empowered, like the Molly Catchpole example that I gave you, where within a week she'd got 300,000 people to sign a petition to change the rate that her bank was charging her, and the bank reversed their fee decision. I mean, customer empowerment at an all-time high and willingness to change. They're big challenges that we've got to try and address. You know,
Customer expectations are at record levels, but perhaps customer experience isn't at its worst level. I mean, there have been worse times. I could be wrong. What do you think about that, Sabrina? You know, there is a lot of good stuff to build on here.
Yes, in terms of customer experience, definitely. I think when I think about customer experience, the thing that is important for me, though, is that we are very careful about thinking about what is important, and also we go away from debates. For example, one of the things we were discussing earlier on is seamless, omni-channel. Is that something that we really need to aspire to? And I think we need to have the biggest possible aspirations. Yes, it has to be seamless, has to be omni-channel, it has to be enjoyable, has to be invisible. Somebody else said invisible. I think we need to find a balance between what is possible and therefore having realistic expectations of what we can do, and the aspiration, which needs to be very high.
Yeah. Experience and engagement are similar. If banks, providers, suppliers don't get it right, does it really threaten the industry in terms of, you know, our prominence, the way that customers come to us to handle their money? Is there a huge threat there right now if engagement and experience aren't right?
Definitely. So let's just think about a second about how we organize as an industry. This is an industry that for hundreds of years had very little competition. Last week we had, for the first time in 250 years, the first clearing bank, new clearing bank. Before Metrobank got the license, the bank license, we had not had a new bank in UK for 150 years. So if you think about what happened since then, since Metro existed, for example, just only in the last few years, we've seen for the first time an unprecedented situation of banks being under attack from all levels. And it's very easy to compete with banks because technology allows to deconstruct banks. So we're going from a situation where the bank was this monolith that was very difficult to attack, to being deconstructed, unbundled, and you got the core banking system, you got the fintech, you got the customer engagement services all coming and attacking the banks. So I think in a situation of high competition like now, the safest thing to do is to stay very close to your clients in all possible ways. Stay close to your clients and then build trust and customer experience from that.
Do you agree with that, Mark?
I do agree with that, and just reflecting back on something you said earlier, that experience and engagement were quite similar, and they're supportive of each other, but an experience is that invisible, transparent thing that you hardly even notice. You just get exactly what you want, as if you were talking to somebody, as if you were having a conversation and a dialogue, and they would automatically do what you needed or qualify what you want, and if they don't understand, you can have that kind of conversation. Now, in a sort of automated world, experiences want to be very invisible and seamless, but engagement is different. And that questioning and proactivity is what the opportunity for banks when we have the trust and a good relationship with our customers. That feels to me the really interesting bit. And then how do you do that in a highly automated, digitized world where we seem to have spent a lot of time? A colleague of mine described us as trying to make our technology more human and our humans more automaton in the way we develop our processes.
Yeah.
And you think that's really interestingly true, isn't it? And yet allowing that human dialogue, that ability at the right time and moment to perhaps not just sell, but actually uncover some of your more real needs to build that relationship. You know, I entirely agree with you. I think that is our great opportunity.
If I can add something
Briefly,
there.
yeah.
You know, we really, of course, I described a very apocalyptic scenario. Truth is that we shouldn't forget that we in banks, despite everything that is happening, the scandals and the negative press, we do have trust. Clients still want to come to banks and trust us with their money. So we have trust, and we got millions of clients in the traditional banking industry.
Absolutely.
So we need to build from that.
David, other industries are often doing it right. What can we learn from them?
Yeah, so there's been some customers that I've worked with that have taken a completely different approach to how they measure their staff. You know, so this more popular measurement of Net Promoter Score seems to be becoming increasingly prevalent with the organisations we work with, and also the percentage point that they benchmark themselves. You know, so many retail banks around the world have a negative Net Promoter Score, but there's some clients we work with where their aspirations are to be liked as much as an iPhone, which is something like 82% in the UK. So I think the way that you measure and then the way you look outside the industry is going to be important, you know, and lots of our clients are measuring themselves against the likes of retailers like John Lewis and cross industries, and then these new measurements, not the traditional sales productivity measurements, but the Net Promoter Score coming in and becoming more prevalent. We've seen a big impact, you know, in the way that you measure yourself against not just other banks but other industries too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, let's move on to the pain points. There are so many pain points. You know, those are the sort of the hurdles that banks face in deepening the customer engagement. But let's look at those pain points, the points where it doesn't always work. And first of all, you know, what do you think the pain points are, David, in terms of the customer journey? There are many, and there are very few, depending on who you are and what time of the day you've approached. But,
yeah, well, I think obviously the number one pain point for the last 5 years has been regulation and the increase in regulatory pressures, you know, and how it often changes week to week. But then there's the complexity of the customer and customer journeys. You know, you've got retail customers who are also business customers, and they talk to multiple divisions across your organisation. And then you have systems and divisions within banks that don't always work collectively or collaboratively together. So it's tough, you know, where regulatory pressure, disconnected systems and teams, and then customers that span the bank. It's not an easy situation by any stretch of the imagination.
It certainly is. It's a mountain to climb. It's clarity, isn't it? It's achieving clarity and being able to act on that clarified information. When it's right, I mean, how do you drive towards that, Clive, to get a better customer journey? What are the features of that?
So I always encourage people to think of it as a journey, of course, and from a customer's point of view, not just the organisational point of view. I think that's where my design background comes in quite handy. And you always have to remember the emotional state of customers. Mm-hmm. You know, they've got to even choose to have that interaction for you. They have a need or they have a desire to do something, and they engage with you, and then they actually, you know, really something happens and there's a fulfilment. And hopefully, as they go through that, they move from an element of fear sometimes or anxiety to an emotional state of satisfaction, and hopefully even, hence the Net Promoter Score, something we want to achieve, a sort of level of love where this experience has just given you something that goes beyond your expectations. And I think that's an interesting and difficult thing to do, and a different brand will do it in a different way, speak to you with a different tone of voice, for example, and just deliver something that isn't expected. And that's when you begin to move to love, or at least like. The problem with Net Promoter Score is you have to have people right up they have to really, really like you to give you that top score and become a positive. So it's no good just incrementally getting things a little bit better. You have to do something quite radical to really make sure that you're getting that relationship and that experience really working. And it has to go right across the journey, because the problem with customer experience is if one bit is poor, that's the bit you're measured by. It doesn't matter how brilliant the rest of it is. And that's the challenge of developing great customer experiences.
You might be pretty average and mediocre most of the way through, as long as it works. But if you have real highs, and in fact sometimes real lows can remind people of where the highs were, and you can start to build a picture which is slightly more interesting. Attracting people to you is partly to do with the overall, the interesting experience, whether or not that's on average pretty mediocre. But you mentioned when one thing goes wrong, you'll be judged by that. Now that is true to that degree. And Sabrina, a seamless omnichannel experience, which is a phrase that we've all sadly used too many times.
Yes.
Is there a debate over that and whether it's the right way to look at this?
Yeah, that was I was mentioning before. Yes, definitely is a debate. I was mentioning the fact that I think you cannot not have an aspiration to have a seamless omnichannel experience. In fact, I think you need to go beyond that into one that is enjoyable and invisible and relevant and personal and elegant. You know, there is an element of elegance in simplicity. I think that's quite important when you hire people into banking. You need to think about that. There is not only science behind the customer experience. There is also an element of art. And I think I wanted to check, but wasn't Steve Jobs that had a degree in calligraphy?
We were talking about that before we came on.
So I think,
confirmed.
and I think that when we talk about diversity and we talk about the kind of people we need to attract into banking, that's something that we need to keep in mind.
The art is really important. The feeling that you get when you've experienced those services is really, really important. And you know, David, it's very difficult to assess and to say, there's my artistic bit, my emotional bit, plug it in there and everything goes to the next level. That doesn't happen that simply, does it?
No, and I just echo Clive's point. I think that the more difficult thing is the bad experience and good experience. The bad experience and increased effort is disproportionate, because if you get a great experience, it still doesn't mean you'll promote and you'll have a high net promoter score. But if effort is high and convenience is low, then it's very, very common now for people to leave or to express severe dissatisfaction. So it's disproportionate. You can have a good experience and people not be promoters. But if there's one bad experience, then the impact of that is far greater. You know.
Yeah. Do you know, it's damage control is a lot more expensive, time-consuming, and negative than helping people from the very start. Communication is an important part of that. Yes, the brand comes from really good communication. If people feel clued up, they have choice, they have power, they are empowered, then actually there's a positive initial starting point. People actually feel that they probably don't blame you for something that they've done wrong quite so easily. There are steps you can take, but I must ask, we're talking about engagement today. How important to banking is this engagement right now? I mean, what are the really serious points about that?
Well, can I
Please
throw
do.
a few things in?
Do.
I would say one of the aspects of getting things wrong is that often is the opportunity to give a terrific response. And that is something you really have to be good at. And especially, I work for Barclays Premier. We have an affluent client who has even higher expectations than everybody, and being able to provide that level of service that really matches their expectations and occasionally exceeds it, but also making sure when complexity does happen, and hopefully it never actually goes wrong, but when you're testing the system, you're really creating something that is more complex and more likely to cause a problem for the customer. Being able to spot that, being able to have that human, if you like, intervention, or that combination of system and human intervention to make sure that is absolutely sorted. And that's, I think, one of the most basic levels of service that people expect. You can go along nice and smoothly, but it's when that ruffle happens, how do we react to that? So that's about engagement. It's about listening, knowing, understanding when that might be happening and intercepting it, if you like.
Any discussion like this, we cannot go without talking about culture, internal working processes, and the motivations of the team. We'll go into that. We have a moment for that later on. But by joining up, by having that relationship-based model that in Premier you have, if that was taken as important into the rest of the retail banking industry, could you start to create a more omni-channel experience? Yes, with technology in mind. Could that now fill the gaps and start to really help customers to feel engaged? You're engaged because you enjoyed it, because you got what you needed out of it.
Well, I think that's our great opportunity, personally, that understanding where to go to sort problems out, to do the basic stuff, to do the more complex stuff. We can do that better with a combination of digital and human. The data gives us that opportunity to understand and be smart, and that's why data is so important. But it feeds into a deeper relationship, a deeper engagement that we can then provide, so that we move from a model where we might call you twice a year to say how you're doing, to actually being really aware that that house purchases might be something that's relevant to you right now, that you might be worried or thoughtful about a long-term future. You know, we're able to sense that and now have a much more meaningful conversation with you, rather than just ring you up and say, do you want a loan? Or whatever it might be. We were moving away from product-based solutions to having conversations and discussions. And that is not just a Premier thing, it's something for everybody.
I think I would just add to that point. I think customer experience and differentiated service levels is happening now in banking, because products and services of different banks are becoming very, very similar, and arguably the only way to differentiate is the level of service that you provide. And one fact on that is, if you look at, I think it was the article I read, it was something like 3 million people have switched accounts due to the 7-day switch process in the last period. And Metro Bank, who we've talked about quite a bit, you would probably argue that they haven't come into market with a diverse set of very different products than their competition, but the way they deliver service and experience is dramatically different. And according to the article, they accounted for about 6% of those switches. So people are switching based on experience in the UK market now, maybe more so than they are based on product. You know, so.
Isn't that because of trust? I mean, another holy grail. There are many holy grails out there, aren't there? We're just counting them now. Trust is really important. Engagement is a practical application of trust. If you trust somebody, you'll be engaged. You'll actually be involved. But I must just talk about something that I'm sure will be very near the forefront of people's, or the top of people's minds out there today: compliance. Look, you want to innovate, you want to be able to, product, we talked about before we came on, we'll get into it, is innovation and product is perhaps, innovation is really important, each product is perhaps less important than perhaps customer experiences to focus on right now, but innovation and compliance, now they're not great bedfellows, are they?
No, very difficult to meet one and the other, but I think the difficulty is obviously the increasing pressure from regulation, but what we've seen in this area, you know, how do you maintain compliancy but drive some sort of innovation? I think you can look to, and you'd expect me to say this, but I think you can look to technology to address compliancy. You know, I was working with a bank that had a 16-step process around compliancy to invite somebody to an event. Like just an invite to an event had 16 steps of process around it to be compliant. But so I think you can put technology and put process, and you can automate and you can structure, so you don't have to teach people what the new regulations are. But if you've got a bit more time and you've managed to achieve productivity through technology around compliance, then it's what you do with the data and the time to innovate or to deliver experience where the real challenge comes. You know, it's that's how.
But you have to focus on the end goal, which is to deliver the service in a great way that customers love. A bit of love. We will get onto a single-person view in a second, but we're going to talk about personalisation as part of that, with digital channels, you know, starting to dominate the customer journey. As you'll know, recreating genuine and emotional connections is a big challenge, as we just touched on. The human touch has become a lot lighter in many industries, if you like. So how can we all achieve personalisation, a single customer view, and a real sense of that personal touch? So, David, back to you for a second. What does a truly personalised banking experience look like? Go.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. Yeah, this theme of digital transformation, is really prevalent in what we are trying to do at the moment in the market. But I think if you look at the banking industry, the way that they've looked at digitalization of experience has been, let's do channel shift to reduce cost. I mean, let's get people to talk to us online through chat solutions as opposed to our contact center to reduce our costs. Whereas the way that many of the organizations here and that we work with look at it is, let's be delivering the same experience that we deliver in person in a branch to the one that we deliver online.
Yeah.
So we see the people who are succeeding in this space looking at digitalization of experience as one where it's about being convenient to customers. Where they want to engage with us, we'll engage with them, as opposed to looking at digitalization as just a cost driver, which it really negatively impacts experience.
I mean, I have something to say there, because I absolutely think you're right. I see sometimes our industry look at digital as a way to decrease cost, and there's nothing more expensive than a human. The issue is that there's nothing that delivers a better experience, a more personal experience, a more human experience than speaking with somebody.
Yeah.
So I think to simply reduce number of branches, opportunity of human cost is kind of it's an easy way to achieve an objective of increasing productivity. What you can do, which takes more time, but is much more effective, is to empower human beings with data, with technology, with systems, so that they can make the human experience into a very relevant, personal, building trust experience.
The difficulty with we humans is that the great experience one day is very difficult to reproduce the next day if you've had a bad day. The use of data is very much more difficult. But look how much expense has been spent on technology in the last X years. David would encourage every client, I'm sure, to do it better, to do it more effectively. It's about enabling the best possible experience. That helps everybody along the chain. And Clive, to recreate a sort of a human emotional touch, we've touched on it already. What could anyone watching us today do now? Is it skills, training? Is it integration? Is it integration with technology, using better technology that is cleaner, simpler, faster?
Well, I think the really exciting, to take technology first and then move back to culture, I think that the technology is finally there now, where the tools to support that human interaction are becoming amazing. So if someone's calling up and you understand the events that have led up to that call, the sentiment, the emotion that person is feeling, either because their voice has been captured or we know a series of events, we know their history. So data is hugely important in understanding who that person is and what their context is. So we have some great tools now lining up to help that point of human contact be really empathetic. So then you get into softer words like empathy. You get into words of ease, and how can we make this whole experience really great. The key, I think, because it is a problem, we have to face up to the fact we cannot provide one human to every customer all the time. We have to scale, and that's why the technology, thrust of technology has been to deliver a service to a huge number of people. So now the challenge of actually using that technology to understand that customer better when we have that opportunity, and we free up our people to have that higher level, more meaningful conversation with you, rather than simply fixing stuff or giving you a statement. We need to make that so easy, but also have that human dialogue ready to go, informed by data, having the tools there to make sure that you can really have that valuable, meaningful conversation and unravel other needs. That's the great opportunity.
That's what it's all about, isn't it, David? I mean, just delivering a better service through the cleverer use of technology, the clever use of systems, but then wrapped around that, and in fact not wrapped around that, that's sort of dismissive, fundamental to the process is people having the right skills to be able to use that, to be able to adapt and flex, but also be informed all the way through. Yeah,
I mean, this conversation reminds me of how things have changed, because with the advent of more tools, more digital channels, social networks, everything that's available online now around products and services, usually the expensive interaction, the call, when it comes through, it's harder to deal with. It's more complex. People are better informed, and so it's even more important that those agents are even better empowered today with the data, because the difficulty of the question and the challenge that they get now isn't give me my bank balance. It's I've got a really serious problem that I couldn't fix via your digital channels, which is why I'm calling you. So the challenge on those agents and empowering them with better data and better tools, it's gone up because of the shift of these digital channels. You know?
I want to make a point about a challenge about data, because when we start talking about data and then getting data, for example, from the virtual journey of clients or the physical journey, sometimes there are technology that follow clients everywhere. I think we get a wealth of very useful information. However, we also get to a point where the convenience of having the data that then provide the personal experience moves into, really is in conflict with privacy. And I would like to, I would like us and the audience to consider the possibility that actually with GDPR coming on board, with new rules about privacy, we may want to change the way that we think about data, because clients worry about data because they have got no control on it. If we move in a place where we think that actually data is an asset, we don't own it. The client owns the asset, and we work with the client deciding how we can use it. And most of all, which I think is crucial, we give clients an ability to monetize some of the value of that asset. Then we move in a complete different world, where actually, rather than infringing on privacy, we may be able to create a trust, because I'm having an open dialogue. I have data, they decide how I'm going to use it, and by the way, I may be able to give you a better credit decision. I may be able to give you a better insurance price, whatever it is. But we need to move the monetization of that data from us to them.
Easier said than done. Easier said than done. It's a really important point, because again, that's a control. The customer would then come to the bank and say, I have this data, I would like to work you in this particular way, if they're engaged enough. But it's quite a leap between you having the data and being the custodians, the trustworthy custodians of the data. How many customers really care about exactly what data you store and what needs to be passed around?
There's another angle on this one as well, which is, of course, the security of that data. So, banks tend to be very good and very careful about checking it's really you. And of course, that conversation is now going in reverse, because our customers are increasingly wanting to check that it's us when we communicate with them. So actually being quite innovative in the way we have that authentication to allow a conversation to go on. But where banks are, traditionally places where you keep your money safe, I think banks as places where you keep your data safe actually makes quite a lot of sense. So I think it's quite interesting. It's one of those things that actually ought to be a strength of how we engage with our customers.
And it's an opportunity.
But this is where I think you're bordering on the cultural piece. It's when you've got the data, what do you do with it? Because the natural reaction when you see a pattern is to use it to sell, to market to, and to be intrusive. Whereas what I've seen some of the best banks do is they use data to provide better service, better convenience, and less effort for customers. And I think if you go with that cultural mind shift of let's be more convenient, let's reduce effort of dealing with us. And the example that they gave to me was, look, the way that we've used data is to say, look, you've been waiting in a queue on the phone to get your bank balance for 8 minutes on average for the last 3 months. Our mobile app provides you immediate access to data on your bank balance and will take you seconds. So it's advertising a service improvement as opposed to using data to be this intrusive sales engine that I think people
I cannot agree more. Then when we think about customer experience, we think about the superficial layer, we think about marketing. Actually, if you want to provide a proper first-class customer experience, you need to sort out the entire process, because the customer experience is not the last point of contact. The customer experience is the result of everything that happens before. Absolutely. If the client asks a question, you need to be able to provide the data. So, and do you also have the cultural point that we'll touch on a certain point?
Yes, briefly. But it's a wonderful thing. I mean, we talk about this quite regularly, and at the top level, saying this is what we should be doing. It's inevitable that any bank would want to sell, have that data that can provide value. It's difficult to go to let's help the industry to heal. Let's help the customers to have a better experience. Where is the quid pro quo right now, Clive?
Well, you know, for all the data we've got, we're never able to say happy birthday to somebody, or you've been with the bank 20 years, you know, or actually let's celebrate the end of your mortgage as well as the beginning of it. You know, things that are actually very meaningful for people. So I'm really interested. I think the whole industry has to learn to use data for more emotional reasons and connection, and it's all there. We record countless phone calls, thousands of them a day. You know, we do all this stuff, and it's just spotting that opportunity to turn that into a real emotional relationship.
We have a couple more minutes on this section. We could talk for a long time on this section. There is so much that we can talk about, but I hope some of those headlines are making sense, and the conflict, but the solutions that there could be. Let's talk about productivity internally for a moment. You know, how can internal productivity be improved by better using data? Specifically productivity rather than the joined up information. You know, it's productivity. How can that now start to be efficient, as you were saying, Sabrina, be more efficient, but also then produce better results for the customer and back into your business? Yeah,
and I think the simplest point that I've seen, tangible examples around the traditional relationship managers in investment banks or wealth management area, where, you know, maybe even 5 years ago, the prep time that somebody had to spend within a bank before they went to see a customer was significantly longer than the time they spent with customers. So, you know, I think systems and tools and technology within banking generally has slowed people's productivity dramatically, to the point where the amount of time you spend with customers has gone to such a low level that you are ineffective in the role. So, I mean, just some simple things whereby, you know, you can leverage social technology today to provide a quick report on a customer to improve that single view, so you're spending less time searching around multiple systems to go and have a personalised dialogue with someone. I've seen that in certain instances improve productivity by 10%. That on a relationship management force of 3,000 people, for example, would be like having 300 new colleagues, you know. And so I think the productivity thing's big, because it's about this shift of not letting systems and tools and technology slow down how long and how much time you spend with customers. And there's some simple things you can do, I think, around that area that can really dramatically improve customer-facing time. And Clive, that'll help with flexibility as well, because flexibility, the ability to answer and provide a service, provide an answer to my question as a customer, that's another really important thing that this can actually allow for.
Yes, it's funny, we don't really use the word productivity so much, but we do want to free up that resource we've got so that it can really be human and really be impactful. So that's the big advantage, and that's where, you know, digital automation, helping people adopt things that are actually going to be a better experience on their mobile or in the branch when it is automated. You know, that's not attractive to us just because it's cheaper. It's attractive to the customer because they get that basic transactional stuff fast, and then they can ask the question. Then they can come to us for that more complex thing, and we can move up a level. So it's the great enabler of freeing up that resource, the human resource.
We're going to break out the crystal ball very shortly and talk about new technologies, the future of. But first of all, before we do that, Sabrina, final question: setting priorities right now to make these things happen. Does it come at the strategy level, the board level, because it takes a bit of time, or is it from both directions? So, you know, allowing the team, helping the team to be heard, to be, to have their questions answered, and to produce a much better joined-up process within. Is that what's next?
So I think there are two aspects, two elements that we need to consider. One, we spoke about culture. The truth is we need to have a customer-centric culture. We don't historically have a customer-centric culture. Where the culture comes, it comes from the top. You show the example. It comes from the grassroots, where you allow a diversity of thinking to come into the bank. I don't think culture is enough. I think you can have the most beautiful customer-centric culture, and you drop it into the way that the bank operates at the moment, into an old-fashioned target operating model, and you kill the culture. It will take very little time to do that. So I think there is an architecture around allowing culture. For example, if we want to think about being organized around customer journey, we need to forget about product and services. It's not product and service, it is a customer journey. So we need to think about new roles in the bank. Maybe we need to change the rewards and incentive of people. Maybe we need to think about outsourcing certain parts of the bank. So it's not just this fantastic ambition culture, I get a leader, off we go. You actually have to go inside the bank, and you have to change the framework, the processes, and the systems that make that organization survive.
Okay, I've pushed us a bit further back in time than we wanted. We have lots to get through still. That's been fascinating. I hope that's been really helpful to you. There's no doubt that the future of customer engagement in banking does lie in the delivery of personalised and relevant experiences that have that personal touch. So let's now look at the technologies that can help us to discover the holy grail that we're all marching towards but perhaps missing so far, starting with mobile. Sabrina, back to you. Will mobile be the holy grail of the future?
Look, I have a strong opinion on this, and my answer is no.
Okay.
I think that mobile is something that we love. We all love it. The millennials love it. We use it more and more and more. But I don't think that really a true customer experience, true banking service can be provided without multiple points of contact.
Yeah.
You know, we have so many ways to speak with the bank. We want to get into branch. We want to call on the phone. We want to use our laptop. I actually, luckily enough, there was just a new piece of research from Forrester, which I read yesterday, and it completely confirms my view. So that's a good thing.
Okay.
And what's happening is that the expectations on mobile are becoming much, much higher than what you were saying.
Yes.
So people expect an amazing experience on mobile, and what mobile does, it increases the number of interaction with clients. So if clients before were speaking with the bank 4 times a year, now they check their balance 4 times a day on mobile.
Yeah.
So it is the most prevalent way for people to interact, to be honest, across all generations. It's not only the young millennials. But I think we shouldn't underestimate all the other channels, and especially, I cannot be more passionate about that, the importance of a human touch.
How about, yes, please, Clive.
Well, yes, I mean, the human touch is interesting. I'm personally quite a big fan of video. I just don't think we've delivered it very well. And I probably would say this, wouldn't I? But the way we design these interfaces is still not good enough to really unlock the power of the technology, actually. I think there's still a long way to go there. So the other good thing about mobile is that if you design for mobile, you are forced to design very well. You are forced to consider the steps. So I really like using mobile as the core experience, not because I expect every single customer to be mobile, but it's certainly, if you have a lovely big desktop screen, you can put loads of stuff there and just have people find it. If you have a mobile, you are forced to work out what are they going to do, how do they understand what's happening next, and how can you make it really work well.
I cannot agree more. I think you're so right. Mobile makes it, you have to think about simple and elegant connections. And that's why it's a great exercise.
Let's do this in brief. Customer and the customer-facing staff, how can we start to, I'll throw it around, but you know, in terms of being to the level of skill and happy and able to communicate with customers and taking the information, plug that back in, and so on. What can be done right now to start to get those systems and those people working together really nicely?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you'd expect me to have an enthusiastic answer to the technology question, but I was, in answer to that, there was 2 examples that I've seen that I've been amazed with around mobility, but one of them is not just mobile devices, but customers being able to interact in mobile scenarios and locations. And there's a bank in South Africa where infrastructure is hard, you know, and to travel is not so easy as we take for granted, but they have an advisor using, you know, our collaboration tools, Skype, to provide one-to-many advisory services that where they can reach out to multiple people in different locations. They're not required to come in, but leveraging video on mobile devices to provide advisory services. I saw a great example of that. And then another really simple one, more on the relationship manager side of things in banks. Just the prevalence of data now that's online, with technologies like LinkedIn, for example. can integrate into your calendar. So before I turn up for this meeting, your LinkedIn profile is linked to the data I see about this meeting. So I'm just a bit better informed before I come in about what your past is, what your history is, and conversations to have. So I think technology can have a big impact on what we do, and mobility in mobile scenarios, I see some great examples of and use cases being used here.
Briefly, it's time for your questions in just a minute or two. AI, machine learning, what role do they play? Clearly in automation, clearly in making that smooth process, and then the human touch comes.
Yep.
What do you think?
I think that we are, as an industry, we get really seduced by all the sexy technologies. So we speak about blockchain and, and of course, artificial intelligence and Internet of Things and predictive analytics. We love that. I actually think the solution to really fundamentally change the way that banks operate is in something much simpler. And I would say what is really revolutionary for banks is the cloud. And the reason why I am so, I feel so strongly about that is because I think, linking to what we were saying before, changing the bank, you need to change the culture. Allowing the culture to survive, you need to change the target operating model. In order to change the target operating model, you need to be agile. You need to allow for innovation. We have all these assets, these IT assets, and we carry them with us. And we cannot really upgrade them very much. They attract lots of our budget that actually should be for innovation. So I think moving into the cloud just increase the agility of the journey that we're doing. I always think that when you do digital transformation, it's like you go up a mountain. It's actually a journey. So there are two ways you can do it. You can go with the cloud, you put a pair of trainers, you put a T-shirt, off you go. Or you can carry all your IT assets with you. Then you need to get a good pair of donkeys to do that. Yeah. And then with the donkeys, it comes all the complexity, how you feed them, and how you cover them, and who's going to carry the donkeys. And suddenly, it's not anymore an agile journey. So I think that's really something to consider, and I think banks are considering it.
You did forget about the magic carpet. Briefly, Clive, yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I think I totally agree with you about everyone gets very excited about these things, and they tend to see them in single channels almost. It's been the rate of adoption by customers is actually very high at the moment. So if you talk to people about would you like artificial intelligence customer, they'll say, yeah, wow, that sounds really interesting. And then they experience it and find out it's actually quite underwhelming.
Clunky.
It still is. It still is. So it's not there yet. And the same could be said about other new exciting technologies such as Google Echo and Amazon Alexa and stuff that customers have. A lot of people bought that at Christmas, but I'm not sure whether they're still using it. Now, for me, I think specifically around AI, it obviously is going to allow us eventually to have a conversation, which will be really rich and fantastic. But it's interesting at the moment that the best examples of AI are in things like the health industry, where you have an expert that needs to have a lot of knowledge. And I think in a way that's quite analogous to an advisor. And then you bring in the advantages of compliance, so AI bringing compliant, but broad spread of knowledge at your fingertips. Yeah. So for me, the great, perhaps underdeveloped opportunity for artificial intelligence is actually to serve the human who will have that rich engagement with the customer.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more on that last point, how you leverage technology with people. And because I saw a really what you'd call innovative example of machine learning and AI where a chat bot on a mobile device was answering customers' questions, and they thought, this is great, digital channel shift, I've got a computer answering my customers' issues rather than the person. And what they realized at the end of this 12 months where they'd done a study is what people do when they chat on a computer, they often fire and forget. So they start a conversation off and then leave it, and the average handling time of a complaint from a customer using AI and bots for this customer was 4 times longer than the 8 minutes it took to call somebody, because they were so focused on getting the problem resolved. So I think it's the application and use of technologies, but on the flip side, I saw AI and machine learning used by a bank to understand common customer problems and then route incoming inquiries through to a team of people that had the right skills to handle them. So I think, these new technologies, it's all about the application of them, but I don't think we're going to get away from the most powerful use of them is when you combine them with people, and that's what we've been seeing.
Talking of speak and forget, let's carry on. We've covered a lot of detail so far, as you'll have noticed, and we hope you found the insights from our panel really helpful. Now, you might be based quite a long way from us here in grey and rainy London today, so we now want you to share your comments and experiences with us for the last 11 minutes. Before we do, I'd like to draw your attention to the feedback form that you can find on your screen very shortly if you're watching us live. We'd be really grateful if you just fill that in so that we can also innovate and devote some of our time to the things that really matter, which is you. Now, we've been asking you to send in your questions and comments both on the webpage and also on Twitter using the hashtag Customer17, Customer17. Lots of you have written through, and I really want to get those thoughts to our panelists now. Exactly 10 minutes till the end of the webinar. So let me find out. Oh, question one is through to my screen here. It's from Daniel Golding at Beringa. At what point does personalisation become invasive? Big question. We talked about privacy. Invasion of privacy is perhaps when the customer decides it's an invasion of privacy.
That's right.
What do you think, Serena?
I think it really depends on the person.
Yeah.
I think there are different preferences, and it's a very, very personal choice what you're comfortable for people to do with your data. My impression is that actually the millennials, the younger generation, seem to be more comfortable with that, or maybe more resigned.
Yeah.
That could be. But I think the only way really to answer the question and ensure that there is the right communication, the right engagement with clients is getting them involved in the way that you intend to use their data. Ask them.
Back to engagement, that is the way to do it. Because actually, you know, I used to call it goodwill. If you actually engage, if you're actually part of the experience and you have some control, if you want it, then there's a lot of goodwill. You will then you'll talk through issues. You might call up and not shout at somebody up the end of the line, or get frustrated with your system, or cause somebody to spend 15 minutes working on something they can do in 2 minutes. It works. I'm going to keep on rattling through. We have so many questions. This is interesting, from Vladimir Dimitrov. Thank you, Vladimir, for writing in. Principal at Synpulse. Thank you. Now, long question. I'm sure it'll be an interesting answer. It seems everybody agrees that the limitless power of technology can be an enabler of better human interactions. Tick. But what's the business case for banks to do it? Why would they sustain the high cost of humans for better interactions when cheaper technology can allegedly provide almost the same experience? So it's a tough question. Does technology really match up? You know, why not use technology for everything when it's getting there? Clive, now we've talked a lot about this. What are your first thoughts about that?
Well, it's not getting there quick enough, first of all.
Yep.
And, you know, we've had, I don't know, 10 or 15 years of speech recognition, and I still get pretty angry when it doesn't understand what I say. So, you know, technology has to be absolutely faultless to really work. So I think using the bits of it that do work, and allowing that high-touch human intervention when it's really worth having. I think that is my answer to that. I think that, you know, you use it when you can, but it's not there yet.
You never have a black and white answer. I think the solution is always in a blend, done it in the most effective way. Yeah, definitely.
What do you think, David?
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, it's a difficult. I've met a customer with 140,000 agents that are sitting in their call centres around the world, that all they want to do is replace people with technology. And they're not so fussed about the customer experience they deliver through that process. But at the moment, I'd say it's not proven that technology can do it on its own. I think it's the empowerment of individuals in a combination with technology that delivers the results, you know, and that's what we're seeing.
We customers, this may be taking it too far, we were customers 5,000 years ago, and we haven't evolved that much in 5,000 years. We still want that kind of interaction, that discretion.
Yeah. I think some of the new challenger banks, some of the new challenger digital platforms, it's very interesting that the richness they provide, really seamless, easy transactions, but there's still a picture of the person you're chatting with, and it is a real person, and the opportunity to match that person to your age and your emotional state, or things like that, where you are. Those are things that technology allows us to give an even better human experience. I think that's exciting.
And there is still a connection between humans. But Vladimir, thank you very much for that question. That was a really good, tough, hard question. Really good. Question from Victoria. I don't have your details, but you've written to us on Twitter. Thanks very much, Victoria. From the room at Investec. Oh, there we go. From the room at Investec. Hello, Investec. How will PSD2 impact client relationships with banks? Now, we've talked a little bit about compliance in the widest form. PSD2, client relationships. what do you think? What are your first thoughts on PSD2? It will have been part of the process all the way through.
I'm happy
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, it is enormous.
Please, yeah,
PSD2, GDPR, open banking are fundamentally shifting the way the bank operates because they allow new entrants to come in, have a different quality of conversation with clients. Basically, we have to up. That's an English word. We have to get,
we get it.
Yeah, we have to get much better because when I spoke about that, that scenario of increased competition, it's just going to be crazy. Just the acceleration of the innovation and the upping up of that discussion, or the quality of the discussion, the possible solutions that are out there, it will be very difficult not to feel obsolete. And also what's happening with open banking is that it will be much easier to compare one bank against the other.
Yeah.
And there's no place to hide.
Yeah.
So we better get more innovative and better engaging with clients.
We talked about this before we came on today in our meet and greet, and we talked about some of these issues before we came on. Compliance, regulation, it is there currently at the moment. It's trying to allow for reporting to be accurate, to be timely, to be real-time. And there's that issue as well. If you are able to report factually and correctly at real-time the details of your customers, then you probably know your customers a lot better than you do now. So there's an element of that as well, which is really important. Question from Varun Gay. Hello. I think that's the pronunciation of your name, Varun. I hope that's okay. From NewGen. What is the most challenging compliance issue? Let's keep this one short. The most challenging compliance issue.
I'll take that.
Please, yeah.
I think that the most challenging compliance issue at the moment is the speed of the compliance changes that are happening. So we are just going to be bombarded. 2017, 2018, there is no single issue that is difficult to face. They're all difficult. But they are just coming and is never ending. This has happened both in open banking technology and privacy, but also before, MiFID II and RDR have just been a constant flux of new compliance issues. There is one point I want to make that sometimes I think that the tech company out there, the Amazon, the Google, the Apple, they're not coming into banking because as much as they could, because they're worried about compliance. You made a comment earlier on that actually, if you got the real data, real-time data, compliance is not so difficult. So I think that compliance is not the big issue that we make of it.
Yeah.
It's just that we blow it out of proportion. We tend to be more conservative than the regulator, and we don't have the data that are required to meet compliance. And when Apple finds out, they'll do an Apple Bank, and we will be toasted.
Yeah. Briefly, we've got time for one more question. Thank you to Matthew Matau from Metro Bank for writing to us as well on PSD2. We'll have to jump over that for this time round. Final question, very briefly, I'll throw it to David. Banking from James R. Scott, who's Head of Content at Investor Limited. Banking is all about trust. Banks are fools if they believe they have customer stickiness or loyalty. It's only human lethargy that keeps customers on board. Wow, sorry, David, I won't maybe not throw this to you. Retail regulatory drive for greater choice will be a game changer. Does the panel agree that this is imminent? So retail regulatory drive for greater choice. Look, I'm going to just paraphrase that because of our timing. Choice, control, the future is in trust. What do you think about that, David?
Yeah, well, I agree with the point that was made. Like we said earlier, you got an empowered set of customers that are now free to choose from new challenges and more likely to change. And that is the whole point of this conversation. That's why the way that you keep them is, you reduce their effort of dealing with you, you improve the level of experience they get, and you'll differentiate your brand and retain customers by focusing on this topic, personalization, customer experience, because it's much more highly likely now that customers will shift if they're not getting a great experience, more so than ever before.
Yeah, but that's what makes this moment incredibly exciting and challenging for us all.
Well, wasn't that exciting? I hope you've enjoyed the past hour and it's provided some useful take-home advice. Lots of opinion, lots of insight. Clearly, customers have become increasingly demanding. It's up to us, the banks, to be flexible enough to handle their demands. Disruptors are emerging everywhere you look, so anybody who can offer a great customer experiences, personalization, the personal touch, and all the other services that go with it that you already have will lead the way over the next few years. Hopefully today's webinar has covered some of those key issues. Although personalised experiences, deeper engagement and loyalty are big challenges to overcome for everybody, they're also a fantastic opportunity to gain the edge over the competition. But it's time to go. If you haven't already, do fill in the feedback form. We'd love to hear from you. A big thank you to all of our great panelists, Clive, Sabrina and David today. It's been great to have you with us. Thanks to Microsoft for supporting our webinar today. And from the Marketforce team here at TrickBox Studios, we very much hope you'll be able to join us again for one of our future events. If you'd like to know more about customer engagement and personalization in banking, I'm sure you would. Don't miss the Future of Digital Banking Conference on the 5th and the 6th of June, featuring speakers from Atom Bank, RBS, Facebook, Amazon, and many, many more. You can find out more on our website, www.marketforce.eu.com, on Twitter at MF_banking. But thanks very much for you watching. It was great to have you with us, and we'll see you soon. Take care. All the best.